Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Building the Black Educator Pipeline. I am your host, Shayna Terrell. I'm Director of Pipeline Programming at the Center for Black Educator Development. I am an activist who has dedicated her life to fighting for freedom and liberation for her people. I am a native of the South Bronx, New York, but I have really been making my way through these Philly streets for the past 19 years. So welcome to the Black Educator Pipeline, and thank you for coming to watch. A little bit about the center. We launched in about 2019 on a quest for teacher diversity in the pipeline. So right now we're focused on rebuilding a Black comprehensive teacher pipeline. And we hope to do that through our 4-4-4 model by supporting aspiring educators 4 years in high school, 4 years in college, and the first 4 years of their teaching career. And we do this by standing on some pillars. So strengthening pathway to teaching, developing culturally responsive pedagogy, and innovative professional learning. And of course, advocating for critical public policy. And speaking of advocating for critical public policy, we are going to drop into the link into the chat a little bit later. We are right now asking Secretary Ed Cardoza to go ahead and make things happen right now for diversifying the teacher pipeline. So we're asking you guys to actually go ahead and sign a letter. And again, we'll drop the link a little bit later on in the chat, but we're asking you to go ahead and sign a letter urging them to do something right now about teacher diversity. I know that folks are in the social justice space right now and are looking for ways to close the gaps for our children, whether it's the opportunity gap, whether it's the achievement gap. But a great way to do that is by investing in Black teachers, by investing in supporting the quality of Black teachers, and investing in our future. And we invest in our future, we are investing in our youth. So again, major shout out to all the funders who fund our work at the center and fund people just like us for being courageous enough and revolutionary enough to really invest in this work. And I want to give a major shout out, as always, to Citizens Ed for this platform. For me and many other folks out here, activists, really using this platform to talk to people that are really in a struggle and doing real things, especially in the Black educator pipeline. So we're 2 weeks post Women's History Month, but we are still connecting with some amazing sisters and lifting up the theme, the voices of Black women leaders building the educator pipeline. So today we'll be talking to two dope activists, scholars, parents, and lifelong teachers and learners. Research shows us that having a Black teacher can do wonders for the Black community. It does things like reduce dropout rates in communities, have more students enroll in college, creates more culturally affirming environments. Black teachers have strong beliefs in Black children, and they believe that children can achieve, which then creates belief in themselves, which then garners greater academic as well as social benefits. I mean, the list can just go on. So shout out to all my co-conspirators right now. Before we get started, I need you guys watching to all answer a question for me. What are the benefits of increasing the number of Black teachers in the pipeline? So just hearing from your opinion, what is the benefit to increasing the numbers of Black teachers in the pipeline? The two women we'll be connecting with today have a wealth of knowledge and experience in different sectors. The most important thing to highlight about their experience for today's episodes is that they are both parents and they are both community members. And I've known both of these amazing women for many, many years, and I'm so proud of their work. So my first guest, Dr. Katera Moore, is an assistant professor of environmental studies at Unity College. She's an urban geographer who uses an environmental justice lens to examine how social political structures contribute to disparities that impact everyday life. She uses a National Science Foundation grant research fellow to obtain a PhD in Earth and Environmental Sciences with a specialization in geography from the University Center of City University of New York. She is experienced in pre-K through 20 education and is passionate about urban education. Dr. Moore previously served as director of Augustine Urban Nutrition Initiative at the University of Penn, where she built collaborative partnerships to address community public health, a system of broader environmental justice. In this role, she created year-long research opportunities for students in professional master's programs to complement her role as capstone advisor. As a practitioner researcher, she presented at national conferences about engaging high school students in food justice and public health work and participated on state and local panels about environmental justice, food security, youth engagement, and career and college readiness. She is a Center for Public Health Initiative Fellow and a lecturer in the Masters of Environmental Studies program. Dr. Moore is a Penn alumni with a bachelor's in urban studies and a master's in environmental studies. Dr. Moore lives in Philadelphia with her husband, 2 children, 2 cats, and a rabbit. She enjoys traveling, cycling, cooking, and hosting tea parties. Okay, Dr. Moore, let's get it with the list. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Moore. Next to the stage, we have Maritza Gurdy, mother of 6, 3 bio, 3 foster, and 1 adopted in 2019. Wife, daughter, sister, grandmother, graduate of Gwyneth Mercy College with a BS in Business Administration. Recent and past positions: 11th Ward Committee person, president of Simon Gratz Mastery Charter High School Parent Association, member and vice president of Mastery's Parent Action Council, community advocacy manager for Mastery Schools in Camden, New Jersey, bilingual resource parents coordinator for El Concilio, part of Philly Counts Latino Subcommittee in the 2020 census, founding member of National Parent Using PA Delegate and council member. Continuously an advocate for the education of children and their parents, she has made a choice to continue to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. So everybody, please welcome to the show these wonderful educator activists, Maritza Gurdy and Katera Moore. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all almost had me out of breath out here, just with the list of stuff. Y'all been out here doing the work and being a part of the work. So as always, I love to start off talking about folks' journey to and through education. So I would love to hear from both of you ladies. Why did you decide to become educators or to enter into the education space?
I'll defer to you, Dr. Moore.
So I've been teaching undergraduates for a long time. And when I was teaching at Lehman College in the Bronx, I found that a lot of students were just ill prepared, for the college experience. So I spent a lot of time in my classes. I was teaching environmental science and physical geography, just kind of really onboarding them to the experience. And I thought, wow, I know that some of the urban schools are failing our kids. Also at the time I was teaching a class for career change teachers, and I tried to coordinate with the education program, and they just kind of were not interested. So I thought that, what can I do to kind of really engage more in the immediate path with students? And so I ended up going to Mastery Charter and teaching social emotional learning, where I was able to integrate environmental education into that curriculum. But also I would say it was really enlightening, right? I had always advocated for my sister, my kids, etc. But actually being accountable as an adult for children's outcomes, that really kind of took me on my quest, right? And from there, I ended up getting involved with trying to turn around childcare centers. And, I just been engaged with kids ever since. I think really my entire path has been some type of middle school, high school experience around science or environmental education. But ultimately, it's like, how can students have the best outcomes? How can students in urban education environments have experiences that are at least approaching, if not on par, with their wealthier peers, so that they can, so that we're not constantly still talking about achievement gaps and all this stuff.
So, Maritza?
Well, I guess my journey started, at a very early age, I guess, since my sister and I were always left to translate for our mother, who came from the Dominican Republic and, got married here in the United States. And we were in Brooklyn, New York. And at a very early age, I always remembered having to translate for our mom, and that continued on for me as far as helping people. And there was one day, and I made a choice because my mother was always working 2 and 3 jobs, raised, single as a single parent when my parents separated. I made a definite choice to be there for my children as much as possible during their time in school. Um, you know, Luckily enough, we had very good, firm, strong teachers that helped my sister and I. And we were, what's considered good kids because we never got suspended or anything like that, fortunately. And I came from a place, born in Brooklyn, but raised up in Passaic, New Jersey. And there, the family and community environment was very positive and a very positive experience for me. And as a result of that, I felt that I'm going to be there for my children or anybody else that needs help. And then came when I met you, Shayna, at Grants, and you were like, "Hey, my name is Miss Terrell. Can we talk?" And I guess it really got deep from that point forward for me.
So with both of you ladies, right? What folks wouldn't see as traditional educators, even though in some respects, Dr. Moore, you worked in the K through 12 space. Maritza, a lot of your time in your most recent work career has been spent in K through 12 space, but you guys aren't currently teachers. But you guys keep coming back and keep dedicating yourselves to the community. So, and a lot of this time we've been talking about it from like a teacher perspective or somebody who's like administrative perspective, but I think it would be helpful for people to understand what do we need to ground the community in this work, because I think that teachers can't do this alone. They need the support of parents, they need the support of community, but how do we hook people? So what is needed to ground the community in this work? And folks out there watching, feel free to respond to that in the chat.
I think that what everyone needs to understand is what the people we are educating now are going to be our future citizens, our future adults. So if we don't take care of them and build a good enough foundation is going to allow our young people to make the right choices for their futures, just civically responsible and educated young people, it has to start with us as a community working with the school. If your school doesn't have a civics class, parents demand that of the school leader. Demand it of, the Board of Education, whatever district your child is a part of. Use your voice, use your collective powers to get the things that your children will need to help them be respectable citizens of whatever city they live in.
Definitely. And Dr. Moore, from your perspective, what do we need to ground the community in this work?
So, I mean, I guess if you kind of follow from what Maritza said, it really is, education really, if you go back to John Dewey, is about promoting democratic citizenship. And so you do, as a community, it's like really, I think that in some areas, like the community in general is kind of disconnected from citizenship, right? And so we kind of think about like, how do we kind of coalesce and act on our own behalf? It can start in the schools, right? So it's like, oftentimes we see things that kind of we need to change, right? People want to make change and take action. Sometimes, building the voice of youth might be it, right? So trying to use the school as a platform. If you think about the school, if you think about like a social ecological model, like the school being the center, then that's going to be the cornerstone of our community, right? And so we have to invest in schools, right? So people have to get involved in schools, holding the school accountable. Even if you don't have a child in the school, you live near a school, you see kids come and go, you see what's happening in schools. And it's just like, ages ago, you think about, decades ago when, it really truly was a village, right? We function as a village for the raising of children. Like, so it could be the lady down the street or anybody in the community. And so we kind of really need to move towards that, right? So whereas we are all the village caring for these children, as she said, that's going to be our future, but we have to build the capacity for them to civically engage. And that only can work if the education is something, just an aside, another thing that kind of really fostered my passion about this is when you look at like Jean Annion's work about the hidden curriculum of work and right, who gets what type of education. And so for urban students, we really need them to get education that's on par with their wealthier peers, where they're learning to and being expected to engage and question things and move things forward. And we need the same thing. We need the same thing for kids in an urban area, and we need community members to promote that, right? So, you know, it's I don't know, you know, it's like things are happening in the community, you know, you reach, it's like the school is the locus, right? You have your city council, you have all these kind of political spaces, but it's like, why can't that happen in the school? And why can't you build opportunities for youth to do some of this work? But you also, in order to do that, you need teachers that believe in that kind of pedagogy, right? Where they're going to believe that the youth, like an activist, you know, type of education.
Ooh, y'all moved into some really dope topics that I really want to spin off for real, that I want to spin off and talk about. So one, right? If I'm a community member, right, and we all exist in the same space, we have a local school, and I'm going about my business. Let's say I don't even have a kid, or my kids have aged out, like some of yours had from the school system. Why do I need to care? And when we have people with those attitudes, how do we inspire them to support and be a part of the pipeline?
Ooh, I'm gonna go back to what I said, because you know, I live in Nicetown, Tioga. Sorry about that. I live in Nicetown, Tioga, and in my immediate vicinity, there are 5 schools. The immediate school, the school that my little ones are supposed to go to be attending right now, just seeing unfortunately, some of the behaviors of the children going in and out of the school, I told myself I can't have my children be a part of it. It was just too chaotic for me. Then understanding and knowing the scores from that school as far as academic progression, the fact that the school was once taken over by a charter, and that option failed. They got sent back to the district, and they still kind of struggling, but trying to get there. It's very important for folks in the community to understand that if your school does their best and excels in educating the children in the community, the school is a hub. Like Gratz became a hub. You know, when you were there, Ms. Terrell, you know, when my son was attending there, it was just the second year of when Mastery went there, and it was like a total 360 in my opinion. But Gratz became the community hub. It is still a very strong community hub to this day as a result of the work and the partnership between the school and the community. And just like you said, you do not just have to have a child at that school, but if you live in that community, be supportive of the needs of that school community. It's very important to be a part of. Don't just say, oh, well, my child doesn't go there. Well, if you live on the block or you live 2 streets down and you see students from that school doing things they're not supposed to be doing, guess what? It's going to affect you. So be a part of the helping, not a deterrent, not anything that's going to hurt the school community.
Mm-hmm. And Katera, I know you would, Dr. Moore, I know you would bring a very interesting perspective to this, because you are, just like Maritza, a true community supporter, even though your kids may not be going to the neighborhood school. So can you tell us like what inspires you to still be a part of the community and supporting the teachers there?
I think really for me is 2 things. Well, in my previous position, I was in a lot of schools because, you know, we ran a nutrition education program and we were in 16 schools. But also when you're in the community, everybody sees the let out, right? And so depending on the school, and you can tell what's the tone in the school by the let out, right? So if kids come out of school and they just are acting a fool, it's just craziness, it's fights, whatever, it's like, what's happening? Versus at some schools, like when, you know, Mastery is like everybody's on the corner. It's like none of that, you know, it's like kids are able to be safe. And so that's the thing. It's like, you know, you can kind of get a window into a school based on what's kind of happening outside of a school. And then it's like, as a concern, because that stuff impacts everybody, right? You know, you hear about people don't want to be on the bus after school time, or you don't want to be walking around because kids are acting crazy. But it's like, what is happening in that school building? And so as a citizen that's observing that, when you can actually observe at some schools, like kids aren't doing that. So it's like something's going on with the school. And so it's like, how do you engage with that school? You know, like, hey, I noticed that this is happening after school. You know, what's the policy? You know, what are we doing to engage kids or, you know, keep kids with good, you know, really soft skills. A lot of that stuff is soft skills. And so I think that's one thing is around setting expectations, right? As a community member, like this school's in my community, right? And so, you know, the city has community schools now that are doing a lot of things that are kind of engaging people in the school, you know, so like they'll have like classes in the school buildings. Like, so it's like you're bringing the school again, like it's almost like how like a church would serve a neighborhood, like a school can kind of serve a neighborhood in that way. But I think that it's kind of really taking an interest in what's happening to kids and like being a nosy neighbor, right? You know, so it's almost like what's happening there. And so like minding somebody else's business because it's everybody's business, right? Because what happens with those kids impacts everybody, right? So it's going to impact everybody's, particularly, you know, depends on what neighborhood you're in. Like if it's a neighborhood where you might have some violence or whatever the case may be, sometimes, you know, it's like, and I'm not saying the school has to do the whole job, because there's a lot of things that happen in the city where it's like, you know, the school can't be the end all be all for social services or whatever, but it's like, what is the school's role? And then again, I think that it comes back to to get back to the pipeline. This is why it's important to have Black teachers, right? And to have a community-based teacher force. So you think about before when we had, when everybody knew that we had segregation, right? And so the people that worked in the school were the people from the neighborhood. So now we have more of a de facto segregation versus de jure segregation. And so the people are not from that neighborhood. And so I'm not saying you have to be from the neighborhood to care, but to understand the lived experience and what students are going to need. You know, when my sister was I think she was in 6th grade, is actually how I ended up transferring her into mastery. She failed science. And I'm like, what happened? Like, how did she fail science? So I go and I meet with the teacher. This woman sits there sucking on a lollipop, sitting on her leg, telling me everybody failed. And I'm like, what do you mean? So she shows me the grade book. They all got like 20%. And she's like, oh, we just didn't have enough time. And I'm like, well, that's a problem, because like somebody that's looking at her grades are going to say she didn't learn science. They're not going to know that everybody didn't learn science. So I go to the principal. I'm like, what's happening with this teacher? And like, why did she think it was okay to talk to me while she was sucking on the lollipop? This literally had to be like in 2007, and it still pisses me off. But
no, I feel you. I definitely feel you. Like,
I feel you. It's disrespectful. Like, you know, because like you didn't value me as a parent. And so the principal's like, oh, she just, you know, she came straight out of college. And like, so she kind of like let it slide. And I'm like, this is not good for our kids. And, you know,
but this leads me to a story and a question, right? Based off of what you're saying. One, especially the importance of the community having a relationship with the school. So when you're saying things like, you know, folks in the community, there's stuff happening in the community, we all should own this, and it impacts all of us. I remember when I was an administrator in a school and stuff would happen with the kids in the neighborhood and folks would come directly to me. And sometimes I would say like, but hey guys, you know, these are your kids too, right? Like, like I work here, but we all live here together in a sense. So the same ownership that I have, not just because I'm a school, but I have the same ownership of these kids because I'm also a community member. And what happens in our community impacts all of us. What brought me comfort was in the fact that people did feel comfortable enough or felt strong enough of a relationship to tell me about things, to come to me, and to feel like we as a school community could help them solve problems. But what I wanted at that time was for community members to take way more stake in the kids, right? To have a way more investment in helping us basically raise these kids up. But another question I want to launch, Dr. Morin, is really based off of something you said about folks living or being in a community. Do we think that teachers in schools need to be a part of the community? And do we think in order for them to do that, they actually need to live in a community?
I mean, I think that it's probably controversial, but I would say, yeah, only because it's, I think that what's happening, like what we're seeing as the teaching profession has changed and the teachers have such a stark different and lived conditions, right? Some of them are, higher up on the income level, suburban, or whatever the case may be, and just really cannot. And I'm not saying that I'm not taking, there's a lot of great suburban teachers that are, caring about our students and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that to kind of understand what's possible, right? And so, like, again, like when I ran the nutrition education program, when I had a new staffer come on, and that were going to be assigned to a school, I had to them walk the neighborhood. So walk around this neighborhood to understand like what's even available. So before you start telling someone about some fruits and vegetables, know what their food environment looks like, right? And so that's the same thing. Like, teachers need to understand what is the environment that is impacting these kids' ability to show up and be ready to learn in school. And so maybe you don't have to live in the neighborhood, but you have to be willing to be connected or attached or tethered to that neighborhood where you're going to walk the neighborhood. You're going to know what's going on. You're going to know, oh, such and such, when he's walking to school, he has to pass by these 3 detrimental things or whatever the case may be. Or, oh, wow, this whole block is caving in, or whatever, whatever's happening in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying all neighborhoods are bad, but in order to know, because kids are showing up to school with all of these things, like they're coming to school, not just like eager to learn, but it's like with whatever baggage that has come in from their life. And I think that they have to have a pulse on that. And so I would be leaning towards, yes, people from the neighborhood or similar neighborhoods, within a certain geographic area, because, place matters, right? I'm an environmental educator, so it's all about place-based education. That's what environmental justice is. But place really matters, is particularly as you kind of frame your perspective on the world, right? And so, and geography is called like situatedness. So like, where are you coming from? And so if you're not coming from that same type of lived experience, then you're going to have difficulty empathizing with a student that might be struggling. And I'm not saying that we're going to use the environment as an excuse for students to underperform or anything like that. But I'm just saying that these things contribute to students' ability to be successful in school. And if teachers just don't get it, or if they're kind of viewing it from a lens of like, it's like negative, right? So it's almost like sometimes teachers will come with low expectations, right? Because you don't expect the children to have to rise to, because they're going to rise to whatever bar you set for them. And so if you're of that community, your bar is going to be high because you're going to want your community to thrive. And so you're going to set the bar high and you're going to help scaffold them to reach whatever it is that you're trying to attain. And I think that that's all. I'm gonna stop talking for you. That's
Maritza, before I go, I would love to get your take on that.
Yes.
Do you think teachers need to be a part of the community, and do you think they need to live in the community in order to do that?
In my dream world, I think it would be a great idea if at least for 2 school years, a teacher will be required to live in the same neighborhood that they teach in, just so they could understand the neighborhood better and understand the children and the families in their school community. And if that and even as an incentive piece for that, if a teacher did that, uh, a certain percentage of their student loans will be, forgiven, or they'd be given an incentive to purchase a home in the community at a very, very low interest rate to help them get a step up on, establishing home ownership if they live in that community that they teach in. And if those things wouldn't even be possible in my dream world, hey, how about every teacher actually does a home visit to and have a sit down with a parent or guardian of that child, so they can not only know where the kind of environment the child comes from, but have more that more that better relationship with that parent, to then say, when things are happening, I know about this parent. I recall this from a conversation. They've also gotten to know me, because even once in a child's school year, so that they can. It stresses me out a little bit when I hear a parent say that they've never spoken to their child's teacher They can't reach a child's teacher. They can't communicate with a teacher. And because that's the first thing I always ask them: did you try having a conversation with the teacher before you try to get their head chopped off by the school principal? And conversation is so important, and that transparency is very important.
Yep.
So
So
yeah,
it's
but I
something I
do.
want to live. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Maritza.
No. Go ahead. I was done. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it is something that I want to like lift up and frame because this topic can be very controversial, right? And the reason why it can be controversial talking about teachers being a part of, but then living in a community is one thing. And the reason, if we talk about a place like Pennsylvania, 96% of the teaching force is white, right? And if we just move the demographic even smaller to Philadelphia, it's only about 24% of teachers in the Philly school district, the school district Philadelphia, that identify as black. So then when you think about that notion of giving people tax breaks to buy homes in communities that they didn't live in, that they didn't build, that they're not naturally a part of, then you have a situation where gentrification may be popping up. And these are people who live in these are our neighborhoods. Like these are the kids' neighborhoods. They live here. But I think the way to flip that and incentivize that is through building a black teacher pipeline. Can we offer some of these resources to these young black teachers coming up? So while a
Yep.
person is in college, can I say to you, like, hey, if you come back and teach in your neighborhood, like as a council member, as a state person, if you come back and teach in your neighborhood, here's the breaks that I'm going to give you. That we begin to put together packages for these young people that are coming up through the pipeline, right? To number one, make teaching more attractive and more lucrative as a profession. And number two, have these young people to say, like, hey, I do want to teach in my neighborhood and my community is investing in me. They're giving me resources to come back and teach in my neighborhood. So I think some of the ideas you guys mentioned are great, but they would be great to incentivize the black educator or the black teacher pipeline. I think instituting some of the policies like that now will further exacerbate the problem that we have. And this is no strike to some of the teachers that we have, because I do think that there are people out there who love our children and who care for our children. But I do think that there is a larger community aspect when we look at Brown versus Board of Education. There's a larger community aspect that happened when we had our community members. So Miss So-and-so who grew up with my mom, who's actually pouring into me and teaching me, but has that deep relationship, that deep rooted relationship with my family, that she could reprimand me, or she knows what the expectations in my house should be. So when we talk about community in that way, I think that creates a different environment rather than somebody who's foreign kind of just moving in and observe what we do, because they're not necessarily a part of the communal process. But I do think that there are ways that current teachers can be involved and can be invested and understand who a child is and understand them holistically, and understand things like not all our children come from a tragic background. And though some of them may live in neighborhoods that aren't the best, their experiences and the people they come from are their people. They're educated people. They're people who care and love their children. But that also brings me to another question for you
Can I
guys.
follow up on what you just said?
Sure.
Sorry. So
Do your thing.
I wholeheartedly agree. Because like for all the reasons that you said, but like this idea of really investing and creating an assets-based approach, for the way that a person experiences a neighborhood, like the kind of, I guess you really articulated it well, where it's like it's not all bad in the hood, right? There's some good things that are happening, and then by living there, you can see that, right? And then you can play upon those assets. But as far as home ownership, that would be an excellent thing. Universities are doing it, and that's how they're gentrifying communities. But it's like, why wouldn't that be an opportunity for a young Black educator to come out and like, yes, I have a home, I can do whatever it is, like whatever the package is, obviously the loan forgiveness or whatever. But it's like it further invest in that community, and it's like you have to be, again, like it's opposed to someone kind of coming in, because oftentimes people come in, it's like colonizing a neighborhood, perhaps, it's like people that are from that neighborhood, it's like you're just building them up and subsequently building up the neighborhood, because when you have the same people that have these opportunities that come from the neighborhood, everybody wins versus some people winning and some people losing. So I wish we could like do that, like fall 2021. Like it's like, okay, here's your package, because that would probably, it's like when I'm imagining, for the student, it's like we don't hype up teaching and all that kind of stuff because everybody wanted, they're chasing dollars or whatever. But if you can, show that you can have a decent quality of life, right? Because we're going to give you, you're going to have a job. You're going to be doing, it's going to be service oriented, and you're going to have a home, and it's all of these things. And so it's not going to be this financial sacrifice, so to speak. Then we can sell it to rising students. And it really does, it's like not to, say I'm like a separatist or whatever, but it's like really prior to integration, kids were getting better, more compassionate education, right? Where because it was the teachers had expectations because they knew the family, and the students didn't feel, I'm not saying I know what all students are feeling, but they didn't, like it wasn't like this kind of battle, right? Where you feel like you're being oppressed by, discipline, where it's like now that the discipline is coming from a point of love, because kids know when people don't value them, and it's always, always a stick, it's like, and it's, all the research is like they calling the cops on Black kids, and it's all of this because that's something you jump to, and where if it's, if Miss Smith tells you, you're going to know she really means it, right? Like she's not trying to come at you or whatever. She cares about you. And I'm not, again, that's not to say that somebody else doesn't care about you, but it really helps, I think, temper some of this kind of these responses that you often find from children that are experiencing hostile education environments.
Yep. And that's some of the work that we're trying to do to get people to invest in the pipeline, is to build incentives and to make teaching more attractive. I mean, they find the ways to do it in other industries that there's a need for. But as we can see, when it comes to resources for Black children, right, they get the short end of the stick. But because you pointed out perfectly, like universities do it, they offer housing to their faculty. They come on in and move in this neighborhood, right, regardless of where it is. Why wouldn't we do that for Black children when we know that the benefits of having Black teachers and teachers from their community would be astronomical at closing gaps and giving them a better quality of life? So to demand some of that stuff, what role do you think the community plays in owning their schools or owning these processes? Like, how does the community take their power back?
Being present, just be there, go to the meetings, if it's, and it's funny, when my son was at Gratz, and even after he graduated, they still said, Miss Gurdy, you could still come. You could be one of the community members that happen to come here. And I still went because that's my neighborhood. The children that go in and out of that school live across the street from me, up the street, next door to me. So, and I see these children day in and day out. Why not take an interest in what's going on? And I understand a lot of people have time constraints. Not every person, due to what kind of job they have, they can't go there. So that is when there should be several people in the community that you know of. Say, hey, have you been going to the meetings at Gratz? Have you been going to the meetings, over at any mastery school, any KIPP school, any district school? Have you had a chance to go, even though your children don't attend it? But I know your schedule is a little bit more flexible than mine. Would you mind bringing me some notes or letting me know what happened? Or, hey, can you submit this letter for me so that school leader could know, what we're experiencing in this neighborhood, and how we can help and how we can change things? You just have to, the communication needs to happen. And it really does, as I said before, be fluid and transparent. It shouldn't be some kind of secret squirrel kind of situation where, no, I only have all this information and I'm not going to share it. You have families live right across the street from your school. Those families, if they don't have kids at that school, the school should also reach out and say, hey, we're right across the street from you and we're noticing some things. Can you give us your opinion on what you see is going on, how we can make things better for everyone in the neighborhood if we see a concerning situation happening? It's all about talking about it.
I agree. It's really about getting involved, having the community get involved and stay involved, like at the school level, right? So at the level of the building, right? What's happening, sometimes it gets sketchy with, people can't come into a school building or whatever because of clearances or whatever, but for some of the evening programs. So that's one thing, but it's just not the school level, right? So for immediate impact, yes. So maybe something at the school building, but then you get to think about, depending on the structure of your your school board or what have you. Maybe maybe you're showing up at school board meetings, whether you have kids in the schools or not. Maybe you're talking to your city council or your alderman or whatever, whatever is going on in your town. Maybe it's the mayor, maybe it's the state, because the state directs a lot of what's happening in schools, because they're normally just the way that the government, they're the Department of Education, right? So they kind of are dictating how funding is happening. They're dictating policy. And so maybe that's where you reach out to, right? And then it's also, obviously the federal government, but really the real impact is a little bit more local. And so I think that it's a matter of just, kind of making demands, like it's civic engagement. It's like, it comes down to civic engagement. It's like, this is important for everyone. And so it's like, when you're thinking about these hot topic issues, right? So it's like, it's policing, is this what food is, all these things, vaccines, but it's like also schools, right? Because schools are extremely important, because you can see as schools decline, society declines, right? It's like literally the cornerstone. Aside from maybe the family or whatever, it's the cornerstone of society. And that when you don't have schools thriving because of whatever's happening with the adults in the building or whatever, or what's happening in the community, then everybody is a lose-lose for everyone, right? So it's just a lose, because everybody knows, right? You think about when kids don't have anything to do, it's like, they get in trouble. They say idle mind is the devil's workshop. So it's like they get into trouble. So it's like making sure kids are engaged and making sure that they know that you see them, right? So when people know that somebody's looking at them, they're going to behave in a different way. So when like, oh, I see you, and that I see you, because I walk up on kids all the time. My kids are like, Mom, you're doing too much. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, somebody might have littered. I'm like, you can't litter, or, whatever the case may be. That's but it's right. Like, it also helps people to reimagine and take pride in their place. And so I think that really is encouraging the community to make this an issue, right? So just like whatever else might be a pressing issue for everybody, this should be at the top of mind at the municipal level and at the state level in particular, so that we are holding teachers to some type of accountability, and we're making sure that the right people are in front of our children, and that there's funding for this kind of thing, right? It's like, maybe in the federal government, it would be around student loans, right? Because this whole student loan forgiveness thing has been a debacle. So making sure that there is a real forgiveness program for teachers. And maybe, for housing, it probably would be in municipal or state level. But I think that it's just, it's like you have to demand what you want, but you also have to, in order to demand it, you have to value it. And I think that sometimes people just haven't thought about it because they don't have kids in the school, right? Or they have, or they had kids in private school or whatever the case may be. They had never had a kid, but it's just like, this stuff really impacts everybody, like now and in the future. And so we have to act now. Like it's like we literally don't have any more time to waste.
We definitely have to act now. And you did a great job at connecting all the dots, right? Because I think that sometimes when we live in, we're seeing what's in front of us. We're seeing right now. But that analogy you gave about how when schools aren't thriving, communities aren't thriving, I do not think that most layman people see the correlation between that and really understand why. And really understand that at the center of when we're talking about education, it's not just going to school and learning math, learning reading, learning writing. Like, education is an entire indoctrination of a person. So when we're educating children, we are literally teaching them. And somebody asked earlier in the comments, they talked about what is a citizen? Do people really know how to be a citizen? But going to school and the education you receive is what's teaching you about citizenship, because it's teaching you about your role and your status in society, what society expects of you, what society expects you to be, and what society expects you to obtain. But then all of that is a connection to your community, because who you become is what your community is going to be. So you did a fantastic job at connecting those dots. But again, I think you make an excellent point, is that if I'm just a general person in the community, I don't see all of that because I'm living in my own world, my box, and my house. And I'm thinking about the things that can affect just me, and not thinking that on a larger level about how the things outside will still impact me. So moving it to a smaller scale, I think this is really interesting because both of you are parents. one of the largest stakeholders to me when it comes to education is a parent. But do you guys think that schools should be accountable to parents? Because we can say, like, most people are
Absolutely.
like, yeah, sure, but should they be? And what
Absolutely.
does that look like?
Go ahead. I don't want to just start rambling, but I mean, absolutely. I think that what you find is that, and you know, it's all this research in sociology. Like, it's a woman, Annette LaRoe, has done this research about how upper middle class parents make the school accountable versus lower income parents have deference to schools, right? And so, in that, because of social capital, whatever, kids are able to have better outcomes because basically the parents are in there, I mean, like, sometimes they're doing too much, but they're literally managing the school, right? You know, they're holding the teacher accountable, they're talking to the principal, and they're acting, you know, based on what the parents want. And so, absolutely. And I think that's kind of the idea behind some of this, you know, some charter schools or whatever. It's like, oh, people can you know, use the market to determine, like, okay, you know, this is our way of telling, you know, the school's accountable to us because we're going to transfer our kids from this school and put them in that school. So in a way, it kind of already exists. But I think that for a lot of parents in urban environments, they have not felt or been empowered to really act on that behalf, right? To hold the school accountable. Because, like, if you're not going to be accountable to the parents of the kids that you're teaching, then who are you accountable to? The school board? It's really, it's like this is your consumer, right? And so this is a market-driven society. And so it's like, that's like a no-brainer in terms of, like, heck yeah, like the parents should be able to have a say, right? You know, like, if it's a teacher that's just underperforming, you know, like, another kid that I actually ended up transferring from our neighborhood school to Mastery. This was years ago, like back that last snowstorm, like maybe in 2010 or whenever it was. But she was telling me how the teacher in the school was, you know, I just really want to learn. He's always out sick. And so we're just playing cards every day. And so there was like no learning going on. She was in 6th grade and she wanted to learn. And it was like, this had been this guy's MO for years, because my sister had that teacher in that same school. And I was like, you know what, let me find you a better school. And so, like, she was able to go to Mastery, and she actually thrived there, you know, and she works for Mastery now. But it's just, you know, it's just being able to kind of say, and so, like, the school came to me, it was like, I know you were behind this, right? I know you were behind her leaving the school. And I was like, yeah, I was. I said, because why is this still a thing that this teacher is still able to just be out? Like, just out. You got, sometimes it's a sub, sometimes it's a not. And it's like, as the principal, like, you're not doing anything to firm up the foundation for these schools, you know? And so, yes, again, short answer, yes.
Yeah, I want to hear from Maritza on this, and then I want to point something out. So, Maritza, right?
Okay.
The question, right? Should schools be accountable to parents?
Absolutely, be accountable to parents, and and also make sure that they welcome the parents in the school. I've seen many instances where, and it doesn't have to even be a parent that's irate. Even just a concerned parent sometimes is turned away from a school. It should not take a parent going to the school district to make their voice heard. A parent should be able to call the school, email the school, request a meeting with someone at the school, and it should be, and that policy should be, yes, you can come in here. Yes, we can talk about this. Yes, if there's an issue or a concern, you know, or an area of an opportunity. Yes, if you want to have something good to say. Because believe it or not, sometimes folks have something good to say and they're not listened to. You'd be surprised. I hear that too. But oh my goodness, what burns me up is when a person says to me, they're not listening to me. You guys aren't trying to educate my child. And you know, and in the role that I'm in now, I am like the first face a person sees when they come to the school physically, or the first person they talk to on the phone. So as an existing parent that has children in the school now, when parents start calling and asking questions, you know, it takes me back to my days when I was, you know, with the parent association over at Gretch, how do we handle these situations? How do we handle if I'm seeing certain patterns, if I'm seeing certain calls of people having concerns with an educator or with a counselor or even with the school leader? It's like, okay, what are the steps you're taking to try to communicate this concern? Don't go straight to the top. There are some steps that you should take and have everything down in black and white. Make sure you try to, my first thing I always make sure I do every school year is reach out to my children's teachers, give them my information, try to put a face with a name, and establish a good rapport. Let that communication run freely, like I said. But
Definitely.
yeah.
Yes. So we all agree that accountability should be had. I guess I asked that question because I'm not necessarily sure that schools are always accountable to parents. And some good points were made, especially about like they're the customer. So when you're in the job of education, you're in the role of a servant leader. You are providing a service. And it's your job to make sure that service is like top notch, a service. But I think that what happens sometimes, whether parents are choosing districts or choosing charters, if you're in a low income neighborhood, what is there is what is there. And I think charters presents option for parent choice, which is why it is supported a lot amongst Black communities and Black people, because we have a choice. If I'm in a low income neighborhood, my school is my school and I don't have a choice. So when another choice comes, I have that option. Where if I'm a person who is middle class or upper class, I have tons of choices because I have money that buy me choice. So Black folks don't always have that choice. And I think that sometimes our systems take advantage of it, whether it's a public or whether it's a charter, because guess what? Where are you going to go? It's
Your
only
captive
me.
audience. Yeah.
Yes. Where are you going to go? You can go to the neighborhood school up the street. You can even transfer to my charter down the street, but we are your only options. Where are you going to go? And for me, I just think it's high time that parents have to be empowered and organized to demand better for themselves and better for them children. But I can understand feeling trapped because you might only have one option. Some people get lucky and have two or three. But what if all three of those options are subpar education? What if one is low performing, what is subpar, and one is just above great? But neither one of them are assisting in closing the gaps for your children. Neither one of them are interested or invested in building a Black teacher pipeline for your child that will close gaps. So then the question is, like, what are parents to do? How do parents get empowered to organize and really take control of their kids' education?
They can reach back and be a part of organizations that are about parent empowerment. Me being part of the National Parents Union, I didn't know of their existence prior to January of 2020. And now I honestly, and I advocate for the fact that if you are in need and no one can help you, there is a person in almost every state, including Puerto Rico, that has a person that's either a member or a delegate of the National Parents Union that can help give you the resources, give you a little bit of the guidance, explain the lay of the land. If you don't know what it's like to say, hey, I want to be a part of my school's parent association or PTA, but I don't understand how to do that. They can show you. I want to run for the school board. They can show you. I'm not really sure how to organize a group of parents and do some kind of voting campaign. Elections are coming up. We can show you how to do that. But it's a collective group of people that are all of like mind saying we want to make improvements, and this is how we're going to start. As parents, our children's first teachers, we're going to get our babies what they deserve. And we need to have the ability to communicate with our children's schools to make sure that everyone has a good relationship to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Moore, did you want to comment on that take? Like, what
I
can
always
we do
got a
to
comment.
empower parents?
I'll stay with a comment, right? But I think that it becomes a two-way street, right? So I think that it's building the capacity of parents to feel like they have a right to engage with the school from a position of power, right? Because right now it's like the school is the authority, and the parents are, like you said, like the receiver of whatever they're going to give them. So if they're going to welcome them or whatever, but it's also for people that have a little bit more power or voice or capacity or capital to make sure that schools are creating welcoming environments, and that's, so it's like twofold. So it kind of has to come from a, one force has to kind of say, with schools, you have to be welcoming for parents. You are accountable, but then it's also from another force that's kind of building up, parents. So where schools and parents can meet. So the activists of the world and organizations such as the Center for Black Educator Development, like those are the places that are like, schools step your game up, right? And then at the same time, it might be the parents union or the center or whatever that's like, okay, parents, we're going to build you up too, right? So it's like, because both things have to happen, right? In order for, and so like whoever can put the pressure on the schools, but also build the parents, because you need both things to happen so that it becomes a real community, like it's a relationship. Because right now it's kind of like a transaction, but like it really needs to be a relationship so that it is part of the community. And it becomes something that is life-giving, right? Instead of like some schools, it's like sucks the life out of people, right? But instead it could become like a vibrant place that really brings life to a community.
Agree. And I would love to see schools become a place where, even with their hiring practices, some schools do this, but I almost feel like it needs to be mandatory. If you're providing a service to the customer, how are you hiring representatives that the customers, right, aren't reviewing? Right? Like, so parents may get to fill out a survey once a year, but maybe they should be a part of a proactive process where they are allowed to help pick and choose the young people that are going to be in front of, or the people that are going to be in front of their young people. I just feel like that's such an important process. And one way that I feel like
do that. Yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. But you feel like if a faculty member wants a job at a university, they have to do all these job talks all over a campus where students are going to be able to ask them questions. And, ultimately, the president or the chair makes the decision, but students are in front of these people to say like, yeah, I like their research, or I like their style, or I don't. And so it happens in in lots of places. So I think I like that. Like, I really like that. Like, it was like to be some kind of, that they do a presentation or something like that in the auditorium, and parents can come in. And at the same time with the review and the retention process, it's like, like we're monitoring teachers for achievement, whatever, but like, what is your relationship? Like, are you like, how are you interacting in this community? So that has to be
parents or schools can have that. They can establish that, right? Like you can establish that where you have a subset of parents, if you have a real board or have a real parent association, where that is what you utilize them for. You can have an open forum process, like you said, an oratorium, where you invite different parents to come be a part of a process, but you can have a select group of parents and parent organizations. And I think that schools feel like parents should be organizing themselves. But in urban communities where you hold the power, no, you need to empower people. You are here, you're in our community. You need to be working with us. And like you guys said, developing the relationships with us, with the community. I know we winding down on time, so I always want to give my guests an opportunity each to kind of say any last things or close out the conversation with your own focus.
Well, I think I said enough.
You think you said enough? I'm gonna make it quick. Family, whoever's out here, and
Maritza, you drowned out just a little bit. You drowned out just a little bit.
Is it better?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I'm moving too much. First, apologies, I had to do this from my car. I don't normally do this, but for anyone out there that is interested in being a part of the National Parents Union, one of my wonderful colleagues put the link in the chat. For membership applications, it is free to be a member, whether it's individual or organizational member. Also, the National Parents Union will be having their second convening Parent Power 2021 on Saturday, May 15th. If you are interested in being a part of it, it is by invitation only. So if you want to reach out to me, Maritza at npunion.org, I'll be happy to give you the link that's considered the golden ticket. And we will have very special guest Bernice King be part of that event. Thank you.
Dr. Moore?
I just say, get involved. Find out what's happening in your community, find out who the movers and shakers are, what the power structure is, And, but I think for the people that's probably watching us, these are already the people that's getting involved, right? So it's almost like you have to kind of, how they say, like, bring a friend, So it's like everybody on this call, like, needs to reach out to somebody that is not involved and invite them to the next, whatever the thing is, right? And so, or be the person in your community that's going to organize a get together. I mean, it's after COVID or in the backyard or whatever, to kind of say, like, hey, these are the issues that are pressing in our neighborhood or what's going on in that school. These are the stats. This is what, what are we going to do? And, here's some suggestions. And so that way that you kind of start, building a way to organize. So I think that it's really for everybody on this call is like reaching out to somebody that's not a part of this to bring them on board.
Definitely. And that you said that so well, because with this whole movement in the educated ecosystem, guys, we need your support. So make sure you like, you share, you comment on this video. Folks who aren't in the education space, especially, to talk to them about getting involved and supporting our communities. So one thing that you guys can do today, you guys watching, but you can also share this because we would like people to join our action urging Secretary Education Miguel Cardona and the Biden administration to prioritize teacher diversity as we recover from educational changes from the pandemic. So add your name to this joint letter and this coalition that we're doing, an educational advocacy group. So building the diverse teacher pipeline has to be a main priority, and it has to be a priority now. So folks that are already in the education space are supporting this. We need community members, we need friends, we need parents, we need everybody to support this initiative. Educated diversity has to be a priority, and it has to be a priority now. One of the other ways that you can support us at the center, go to www.thecenterblacked.org. If you know a young person in your community that's interested in teaching or that will make a great leader, please refer them to our Freedom Schools Literacy Academy program. You can check out our academies page. We still have applications open. If you have a young person in your neighborhood who's in 1st to 3rd grade and has nothing to do, you can refer them to be a member of our Freedom Schools Literacy Academy, our virtual programming. I would like to thank everybody for watching today. This has been a great, robust conversation about how you as a community member or a parent can support the Black Educator Pipeline. And thank you to all my co-conspirators watching out there. I'll see you guys next Thursday live here at 12.